It's really interesting to understand the difference in the dichotomy between living in love and living in fear. And it's best illustrated if I put cells in a petri dish and I put nutrients in front of the cells will move to the nutrients. But if I put toxins in front of the cells move away from the toxins. The significance is when you're in a growth situation, which is really what love represents, you're open because growth is open to the world and you assimilate things, and that's where growth comes from. Protection is just the complete opposite. Protection means you're threatened, your life is threatened, and you wall yourself off in protection. So growth is open and protection is closed. Well, the relevance is then you can't be in growth and in protection at the same time. So in our normal history of biology, protection is a necessary part of our survival. Being chased by a saber-toothed tiger, you seriously have to do something about this. So what nature has done is created a protection mechanism. In scientific terms, it's referred to as the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, very complicated, abbreviated as HPA. And what this really represents is the hypothalamus, the part of the brain that does an interpretation. It looks at the world and says, am I in a safe place or am I in a scary place? If the hypothalamus sees that we're in threat of any kind, it sends a signal to the pituitary gland, the master gland, whose signals coordinate the activity of 50 trillion cells. Well, in the case of a threat, the pituitary gland releases hormones that activate the adrenal glands. The adrenal system is referred to as fight or flight. So it's basically a protection mechanism. So I say, okay, great, the HPA axis, hypothalamus sees the threat, pituitary coordinates 50 trillion cells, and the adrenal gland prepares for a protection response. Well, if you're being chased by a saber-toothed tiger, you're going to have to use your arms and legs to run away or fight what you need to do. So the system, when under threat, releases stress hormones from the adrenal gland. The adrenal gland allocates all the energy of the system to run away from the saber-toothed tiger. Well, that means the first thing the adrenal gland activity does is cause the blood vessels in the gut to constrict. This forces the blood, which has the energy, to the arms and legs. But then you have to realize this. The moment you shut down the blood vessels of the gut, this is where growth and maintenance and the necessary control and stability of the body is coming from, the organs of the viscera. So when you're in a moment of threat, you shut down the energy going to this gut because you're allocating the energy to run away. That's one of the first things that happens is we shut down growth and maintenance of the body. And people say, well, growth, I'm an adult, I don't need to grow. And I go, we're made out of 50 trillion cells, but every day we lose billions, hundreds of billions of cells, numbers that are just too big to conceive of, actually. Normal attrition, aging, damage. And so basically it says every day you're losing hundreds of billions of cells. That means by definition, every day you have to replace hundreds of billions of cells. So while you don't see yourself growing, every day you are growing to match what you're losing. So if you shut down the growth of the system, it won't take very long for the system to become in a state of disrepair. Because if you're not maintaining the replacement of those cells, this will lead to sickness and disease. And number two, remember, when the threat is present, the adrenal hormones are released in stress. They shut down the immune system. And this is an effort to conserve energy to run away from the tiger. What's the result of being in a state of protection? The answer is you shut down the growth and maintenance of the body, and you shut down the immune system. Both of these, if sustained for a period of time, will inevitably lead to disease and death. And just refer back again to the nature of why evolution gave us this protection response, to run away from the saber-toothed tiger. But once you run away from it, once you've made it away from that tiger, then the system goes back into growth again. So by nature's understanding, you're only supposed to use the stress system for very short intervals of time because it interferes with the normal functions. And then you look at today's world and we realize 24/7, 365 stress hormones are being released into the system. We read the newspapers, we watch the news, we're concerned about the world and its unfolding. So what was supposed to be only used for a very short time has now become chronic. And the chronic release of stress hormones has resulted in an elevation of the amount of disease and sickness that our planet is experiencing right now. So the significance is we must recover And then to recover, it says, we must get out of the fear that we live in, because fear kills. It's interesting in regard to the level of health when we're in a state of growth or a state of protection. The level of health is totally a reflection of your vitality. And what we find is just very obvious when people are in love and they express tremendous vitality. But when people are in fear or in protection, the life force seems to be drained out of them.